Well, hey, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it for this ON1 Live Webinar. I hope wherever you're at today, it's beautiful and sunny. Here in Portland, it's like 102. It's gonna be a scorcher today. So wherever you're at, I hope you're staying safe and you're staying cool or warm, whatever you choose. And thanks again for joining me today on this awesome Friday. Today we're gonna be talking about creative ways to modify colors. And it's not gonna be, a reinventing the wheel webinar, but I definitely want to showcase some tips that you can use to just boost colors in your images or even modify the entire color within a specific area on your photograph. So let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about creative ways to modify color. And the first thing we're going to talk about is just probably the most basic way to modify color. Just if you're a beginner into photo editing or you're not sure how to modify colors on your own images, this is just going to be a quick way to show you how you can do that with one filter. So let's go into this image here. I'm just going to double click it. And we're going to go into the effects tab for this image. For this webinar, I'm going to be using AI Auto for every one of my photographs. I'm not going to be modifying any of the tone and color. I know a lot of people have been asking me, why don't you just use AI Auto? And I really just like fine-tuning my own image. I'm sorry. It just is fun to go in there and modify sliders. But if you're an AI Auto user, this is the webinar for you because we're going to be only using AI Auto to develop the tone and color. Well, not the color, but the tone and color. Okay, so AI Auto for this image. Bada bing, bada boom. I think that looks pretty good. And then all I'm going to do is just add a local adjustment for that left side of the portrait. Let me move my face out of the way of the levels here. Okay, so for this local adjustment, I'll just rename it darken left side. It's a darken local adjustment. Hold down Shift and K. That's going to grab me my local adjustment gradient. And then I can just drop that down over there. I'll flip it around a little bit so that it's covering the left side of the frame there. And I don't want it covering too much of her. I don't really mind the feet right there because I'm going to grab this perforated edge and I'm just going to pull that to the left. And that's going to remove the majority of that. I mean, there's a little bit on her leg, but you could account for the shadow there from this vehicle that's sitting right next to her. So it's not really a huge deal if you get a little bit of the darkening on her as long as it covers up that big kind of bright area to the left. So if I turn this darkening left side off and on, it just does a good job of evening out that side of the frame. We have a lot more even of an image now, like that. So there we go. That's all we're going to do, and now we're going to start modifying the color. So again, a quick way to just jump into modifying specific colors is to go into your effects tab, add a filter, and then we'll add the color enhancer filter. The color enhancer filter is kind of the go-to filter in Photo Raw for modifying colors because you can modify your color just like you would inside of your develop tab, but you can also modify specific color ranges. So if you wanted to pull up on your yellows or pull up on your blues, whatever specific color you wanted to modify, you could do that within the color enhancer. So with this image, just real quick again, if you want to modify specific colors in here, we'll head down to the color range area, and there's a ton of reds in our shot. So let's grab the red color range right there. Now we can modify the hue, the saturation, and the brightness of that specific color. So if I want to dim down my reds a little bit, I can just pull back on the brightness of them, and now they're not as bright. Well, when we pull back the brightness, we're richening up the saturation a little bit. So we'll just pull back on the saturation a hair, and now we're just dimming down and desaturating the red. So if we turn off this color enhancer, now we've toned down those red colors within our photograph. Sorry, I don't know. Every time I have a webinar, my dog dreams and has a crazy dream. Okay, so now we're just modifying those specific reds. So we turn off the red color enhancer filter. There we go. Now we've kind of added in a mood to the shot by just modifying those red colors. Because there's so many reds within the shot, we can really, fine tune our image just by modifying these color ranges. Because there's only, a few different colors within the shot. There's reds, there's a few blues, there's some grays in here, and then these yellows. So it wouldn't be too hard to go in here and fine-tune just the overall exposure of this image with these sliders. So let's say we want to add in, more saturation and a little bit more liveliness to the reds. We can just pull up on the brightness, and we'll pull up on the saturation. And that's a little intense. So we'll pull back on the brightness a little bit like that, and maybe the saturation a hair up to 2. So there we go. And again, all we're doing is just modifying the specific colors. So I can see there's blues in here. We'll just go into the blue area. So I'll just pull back on the blues, and you can see now I've desaturated all of those blues in my image. I have no saturation within the blues, and so now we can even dim those down even more. And if you don't want the blues on her shirt right there, there you go. Now you just have a gray shirt on your photograph. But keep in mind, it's going to be removing the blues from everywhere that there's blues in your shot. It's going to try to detect every tonal blue in your image. So just be careful, because you could be removing a little bit of the color from the reds and stuff like, or not the reds, but the grays within your image, the middle grays. But again, color enhancer is just a fast way to go in and modify, specific colors. So again, yellows, if I go into my yellows, I'll just boost those yellows and the brightness. And look at the bottom of her feet. I guess I could zoom in here. So now if we look at the bottom of her feet here, now we're boosting up those yellows in the image. So color enhancer, go-to filter if you want to just quickly boost up the colors within your shot. It does an awesome, awesome job of doing that. All right, so now onto the meat and potatoes of this webinar. We're going to be talking about creative ways. So the first creative way to modify color is to use a color range mask. And I know it may not be the craziest thing ever, but I tend to use color range masks and luminosity masks all the time when I'm editing, and they are awesome for colors. So let's add a filter, and let's just add a curves filter. So the curves filter is an awesome filter for using masks, because when you use the curves filter, you have to apply an adjustment within the curve to actually see something happening. So I like to use it for pretty much any adjustment in an image that I want to apply specifically to a specific area. So if I want to just modify these reds, I'll go in and put my masking options here for this curves filter, and we'll just rename it reds actually. And I'm going to head to my color range here. I'm going to click that to enable it, and then I'm going to use my color dropper, and I'm going to drop it on just an area of red on the image, right? Then I'll view my mask. Always view your mask just to make sure that everything's neat and tidy on your mask. So we can see that a lot of it's on her skin. She has some red tones within her skin. So we'll just fine tune this a little bit with the color range slider. Just like that. Maybe until it's just right off of there. Okay, and now let's just add in a little bit more of the mid-tone. So I'm going to use the level slider right now. So the level slider within masking allows you to bring in specific tones into your image. So if I want to bring in more mid-tones to this shot, all I have to do is grab this middle point on my level slider, which is my mid-tones, and I'll pull it to the left. You can see now it's adding in mid-tones to the shot. And I'm just doing it until I see a little bit of it on her skin. Probably right about there. So now I'm just going to go in here, I'm going to mask this out from her face right there, and then I'm just going to view my photograph, and I'm going to head down in here to this backpack, and I'm just going to paint this mask onto this backpack. So I'll just hit K on my keyboard. Ooh. Oops. Where are we at here? Oh, sorry. B on my keyboard. So now if I view my mask, I'm just trying to paint this all over her backpack here so we can start modifying a little bit more of the tone of color in her backpack. And actually, let me just use a perfect brush here. Yeah, we're going to grab the perfect brush. So I'm just going to hold down Command R, and the perfect brush allows you to paint on specific tones without modifying any areas around them. So it's basically like the paint in the lines tool. So I'm just going to go back and view this shot. And what I want to do with this curves filter is I want to deepen and darken the reds. And by using this curves filter, I can pull back on the shadow tones. So I'll grab a point on my shadow tones here, and I'm just going to pull it down. And you can see it's just going to enrich in these reds with a little bit more color because we're darkening, we're adding in more gray, so we're saturating. And then I'm going to pull up a little bit of my midtones just to make sure that they're popping still. So if I turn this off and on here, I love what it's doing to the reds in the shot, but it's not applying this to down here on the bottom part of the backpack, and I want that to be applied there. So I'll just use my perfect brush, use a big old brush size here, and then I'll just paint this in to the bottom of the backpack. And we can actually use it to paint into the top too, even just to add more. So now if we zoom out, if we turn this reds filter, or the reds curves filter off and on, you can see it's really livening up those reds in there. It's freaking boosting the crap out of these reds in this area on her sweater right here. And it's also boosting the reds down here in her backpack. And you can always remove this. So if you don't want this applied to, you know, behind her in her foreground, you can just hit B on your keyboard, Shift X to switch your mode. And then we could just remove this, you know, this red boosting from behind our model here. So now it's just applied. Oh, we still got a little bit going on over here. Oh, I got my perfect brush on. So if you're using your perfect brush, make sure you turn it off if you don't want it, because you'll be like, why isn't painting anything away? But sweet, okay, so figured out the perfect brush thing. Now we'll just paint away this red from behind her. And there we go. Now if we turn this off and on, it's just applied to that area in her backpack, and then this nice area of red on her sweater. So super quick way to just boost specific colors within your shot just by using, you know, a curves filter. And you could do the same thing to other colors as well. So if I add a filter, we'll add curves, just rename this blue, masking options, color range, color dropper, blues, fine tune the color range mask. That looks pretty good. We'll view it. Now if we just add in a little bit of contrast here, we can liven up the colors within our shirt. And we can also feather this a little bit so that it's not so jaggedy. There we go. So there we go. See how much more contrast is in that one specific area? It just is a really helpful tool, you know, if you're looking to, you know, go in and modify a sweater or something like that, or just boost up a specific area in your shot. I love the curves filter and color range mask for that. So just like that, you have a little bit more contrast in the blue, but the overall image hasn't been affected by anything. And you can also do this with different filters. So if you wanted to add, you know, a LUTs filter to just specific colors in your shot, try it out. So if we want to just dim down, or, you know, maybe add a cinematic effect or kind of a moodier effect to the reds in the shot, we'll just add a filter. We'll add a LUTs filter. And I'm not going to apply this specific LUT because it's just too blue, but I'm going to go into my masking options. I'll use color range, and we'll grab a nice area of red here. View our mask here. Turn down the color range so it's not on our skin. That looks pretty good. So we'll view that. And now if we use something like this Bruneg one, now if we zoom into our subject here, we'll zoom out a little bit. So if we zoom in here now, if we turn this LUTs filter off and on, it's just dimming things down a little bit. It's just taking a lot of that bright saturation off of those reds, and then we're a little bit more focused on her. And it just allows for, you know, creative ways to modify those colors. So now if I want to go in here, I can zoom out real quick. I'll brush this away from everywhere around her. And then it's just applied, you know, to her backpack, and then that red on her sweater, but it looks natural. It looks like it's stylized like that. And you can do this with any of the filters in here. So if I copy this mask, we'll just close out of that filter. We'll add maybe a split tone filter. We could add split toning, and we'll just paste that mask. View it. Same mask we had before. And now we can add, you know, we'll cool it off. We'll just increase the amount. And now we can modify, you know, those specific tones or colors on, you know, our model here. And you can always go in and, you know, fine tune and add a little bit more to each area, or use your perfect brush. But just as a starting point, you know, the color range masks are a super creative way to just go in and, make a little bit of an area pop or dim down an area on an image. Super fun way to do that. Move on here. And so we talked about, color enhancer, which is using very basic color ranges to modify specific colors. And then we talked about color range masks, which you can use to, fine tune very specific colors within your shot. And now we're going to talk about just modifying colors within your shot and replacing them with other colors. So this is really fun to do with portraits, especially if you have a person with a lot of different colors on their shirt or something you want to maybe take out of the image or tone down a little bit. This is a great method to doing that. So we'll just grab this portrait here. Again, I'm going to go into my Develop tab, AI Auto, and then maybe ON1 Neutral. That looks really good like that. Cool. So now we're going to go and rather than using a color range mask with our Effects tab, we're going to use a local adjustment and we're going to replace the color within the shot. So I'm going to go into my local adjustments tab. I'm going to go to paint with color down here like that. I'm going to use this color dropper here and I'm going to drop it on this area of blue. And with this, I want to kind of add a complementary color to the colors on the shot. I don't want to add in a crazy color, but what I want to do here is I want to remove this orangish red color from her shirt and just replace it with a mild or a little bit brighter blue. So I'm just going to grab the same color that we have and move it up a hair, or to the right a hair on our color spectrum here, and then I'm just going to move the brightness up quite a bit to about right there. That looks pretty good just like that. And we can always pull back on it after we brush this in, but for right now that looks pretty good. So with this adjustment, what we want to do is we want to change the blend mode because we want to replace the color. We don't want to just apply this adjustment on because it will literally just paint on blue color like a paintbrush. So we're going to go to the blending options here with this gear icon. We're going to go to our mode and we're going to go down to hue. Now in the hue blend mode, it's going to take any color within the shot and it's going to replace it with whatever your color you're painting onto it. Now the hue blend mode allows the colors to be replaced without modifying any of the tonality. So it's just taking that hue or the saturation in the color. It's not taking any of the tonalities that you paint on with it, which makes it look really natural for when you're painting it on shirts and things like that. So with this shot in particular, I'm going to use my perfect brush again. I'm going to hold down Command and R, and I'm just going to make my brush size a bit bigger, and then I'm just going to paint this on to her shirt here, just like that. And we're just using our perfect brush again to go in here and paint it on all of those red areas. And then we'll do it down here a little bit, so we don't want to miss these areas in there. Just like that. Well, maybe there's a little bit more red. There we go. So now, if we go over to our adjustment, we'll just rename this blue swap. If we turn this off and on, it does an awesome job of just swapping that color. We've just replaced that red color on our shot for this more easy looking blue color. And I think it goes with the coolness of the frame. And I like doing this with images like this just because sometimes when you have a model with a lot of, or they're wearing outfits with a ton of different colors on them and patterns, it can be a little distracting. So if you're just looking for something to, tone down the colors in your shot, this is a great way to do that, especially if you're using clothing or something like that. And we can always, again, go to our color and our paint with color, and we can modify any of the tonalities within the shot. But, I think it looks pretty good just like that. And now we can kind of expand onto that cool blue theme. We'll go into Effects, we'll add a filter, and we'll just stylize with a LUT filter. And I can use, this Bernag one. Or no, maybe we'll just use Simple Warm. So we'll use Simple Warm, and then I'm going to go into the gear icon real quickly here, and I just want to take this off of her face a bit. So I'm going to use the skin slider here, and that's going to remove the LUT from her skin tones. So now it's just applied to mainly the shadow tones and the highlights. So now we've started with this photograph, and we have this image. So just a quick way to, replace the color in your shot and, dim down whatever sort of bright clothing, article of clothing your model's wearing. Okay, so I really enjoy this method just because it's a fun way to modify basically everything in your shot with one filter. So we're going to go into our add filter tab, we're going to go to the effects tab here. We're going to add a filter. And before I modify any of the tone and color or anything like that, I'm just going to add one filter, this black and white filter. So in this black and white filter, I'm not actually converting this image to a black and white. What I want to use this black and white filter to do is to modify the colors in my shot. And if you watch the recent night video that just came out, Night Photos Made Easy, we do an edit in there where it's similar to this, but this is a little bit more in depth. So with this black and white filter, we're going to name this Colors and Tone. And in the filter, the first thing I want to do is go up to my gear icon, and I'm going to go to my mode, and I'm going to choose luminosity. Now, when I choose luminosity, that's telling Photo Raw to only apply this colors and tone filter to the tones within my image. It's not modifying the color, or sorry. Yeah, so it's only applying the tone, it's only modifying the tones in your shot. So when I pull up on specific color sliders, it's going to brighten and darken them. It's not going to actually add any saturation or anything like that. So in this color and tone filter here, let's say I want to darken my greens. I'm just going to grab my greens, and now I can darken my greens just like that. And then I can do the same thing with the yellows. We'll really make kind of a moody shot here. And then I have a little bit of red up there, so I'll just pull that up, or pull that back to darken that like that. And I think that looks pretty good as far as just the darkening of these colors. So we have more contrast within the shot, the foreground is more pronounced. Now we can head into our tone area, and we have a ton of different sliders to modify the tone. So we'll just add in contrast like that, maybe boost the shadows a hair. And then play with our highlights a bit. Oh, there we go. Pull them back all the way, why not? And then we'll add in a little bit of white just to make sure everything's nice. I'm going to hold down the J key. Oh, we'll pull back on the white. Oh, there we go. So now we don't have any blown out area up there. And now we can just add in a little bit of detail, maybe. Like that. Maybe a little bit less. And then I can pull up on my exposure. And so just in this one filter, literally just this black and white filter, we've done this. And so I just love the black and white filter for doing, little things like that. Just, it's such an easy way to go in and modify those colors in your shot. And then if you want to bring in, even more detail or contrast, you can, add in shadows, pull back on your shadows. And now this is one filter. So, you could use your effects tab to take away this entire filter. You could use this opacity slider to fine tune it. Or if you like this look, then you could add another filter. Let's just add, we'll add a LUTs filter because I love LUTs filters. And then we'll add Bernag again. And so now look at this shot we got. From this to this in 2 filters. So just a super fun way to modify those colors in your shot without actually using a color oriented filter. And again, you can always use this opacity for this effects and modify, how much or how little you want on the frame. Also, you could use a blending mode in the effects tab here. Let's say you don't like what it's doing to the color, you don't like how it's dimming it up. We'll just go into our blending options here. We'll go to our mode and we'll choose luminosity. So now we are keeping that original color we have, but if we hit the backslash key on our keyboard, we're only modifying the tonality within the shot. So you can have these blending options in here just for your entire effects tab as well. They're not just for one individual filter. So that can be really helpful too if you're looking to fine tune a specific area on your shot. You could also use color range masks within your effects tab. So if I want to just apply this to the greens, or not color range mask, I guess you can't use color range mask with your effects tab, but you can mask it out. So if I wanted to remove this from the upper left, I could just hit M, or not, yeah, M, pull this up a little bit, up there, feather it. And so now I'm only using this bottom right to the image, and I'm using the original top left, and it does actually look a little bit natural like that. So you can mask your effects tab. Don't forget about doing that, because you can always mask and remove the opacity from your effects tab.